Isn't life positively electric? I don't know about you, but our citizens know that very well, as they have seen how quickly their favorite train sets, personal computers, and small entertainment appliances stop bringing them joy once little Timmy here mistakes a wall socket for a toy, and the sizzling and delicious cable juice inside it dries up. So, how about we make sure it never does? Last time in the Soviet Republic of Arab map, our discussion about oil and oil the things you can do with it lacked one critical item, so let's summon a repeat session of the Greasy Committee because the limited import capacity of foreign pipeline connections is a real thing. Now, don't spit your coke out. All of our previous conclusions are valid. But if you build a foreign connection to feed your refinery, you'll quickly realize that it just can't handle the job. And that shouldn't surprise you, since one connection can only import 60 tons of fluids a day. That oil tank parameter you can find in its description isn't about storage. It sneakily tells you how much the connection can carry in 1 second. A day in workers and resources equals 60 real-life seconds. So at 1 ton a second, one connection delivers a vastly insufficient 60 tons of oil every day. And getting one refinery actually reasonably supplied takes about 4 of those. The good news is that research does not limit the number of connections, and you can just keep unlocking and building them. All in all, the whole issue of needing more than one connection just adds about 300,000 to 400,000 rubles to our projected costs of setting up a refinery, which is nothing given how profitable the whole scheme is. Meanwhile, the game having 60-second days is anything but nothing. There is another vital industry that relies on this, and yes, you've seen the thumbnail, it's electricity. You may at some point have looked at the thousands of megawatts a power plant can make every day, wondering how it translates into what actually goes into the cables and how it relates to cable capacities. The answer is simple. The numbers on the plants are shown per day, and on the cables, per second. This humble 6 megawatt high voltage wire can transmit 360 megawatts of power every day. Likewise, if you look at, say, a coal power plant, you divide the 1400 megawatts it makes daily by 60 and get 17.5 megawatt seconds, which is the maximum amount the plant can feed through the high voltage lines connected to it. That's what the max wattage parameter in the plant description stands for. This days to seconds conversion works the other way around too. An aluminium plant eats 141 megawatts a day, so it needs a 60th of that every second. This means that our 6 megawatt cable is enough to feed 2 facilities of this type and then some. So, with some planning, you really don't need to plop maximum capacity wires that much. Just to illustrate, 1 kilometer of 6 megawatt cable costs about 6 grand in 1985. That same amount of top-of-the-line 18 megawatt cable goes for over 34,000 rubles. That's twice as much cost for every megawatt of capacity. So choosing the right wires for the job can save you a fair bit of cabbage. Anyway, we need to look at the power plants themselves, don't we? But first, let us take a quick peek at national consumption. We can easily predict how much factories might eat, but non-industrial consumers are trickier and actually take up the lion's share of it, as Arab Republic's 60,000 people, provided with all social amenities, ate up 460,000 megawatt seconds in 2019. This gives us a rough rate of 21 megawatt per 1,000 people every day. The number isn't perfect, obviously, and depends on the kinds of municipal improvements you have, but it's a good enough reference point for us to make better judgments about the value of power plants. But are they really worth constructing? Is the first question that comes to mind, and let's just say that I'm a big proponent of importing electricity, until you get bored of it and decide to make your own. There's virtually zero hassle bringing electricity into your country, and it's cheap. In 2019, Soviet Republic of Arab map ate up 800,000 megawatts of power across all consumers, and if we imported all of it, we would have paid just over 5 million rubles. At more than $500 million in total costs that year, it's a drop in the bucket. But let's assume we want to build a power plant for now. If we transport ourselves back into the classic Eastern European environment, coal is something you have to buy for heating. So why not just make your own electricity out of it as well? At 1400 megawatts a day, it cranks out enough juice to supply a town of about 70,000 people, minus industry. Just plopping one of these is going to last you a long time. But does it actually pay the bills? It does, generating up to 700 rubles a day, all with a profit rate of 38% with imported coal. Not exactly the tar-suffused cash hurricane of oil refineries, as you can see, and building the actual plant just adds to the aggravation as it costs a whopping 400 grand. Even in optimum conditions, it pays off in over a year and a half, and since we know optimum conditions never happen, it's probably going to take years to get that investment back. And it's not exactly super fast with domestic coal either. But what about the other burn hydrocarbons to play red alert facility? Could the oil but gas but really oil power plant be any better? It sure delivers less electricity, covering the daily needs of 50,000 citizens, but at full capacity it earns up to 1100 rubles a day, which is already a lot more promising than coal, yielding 76% in profits. And that's with imported oil. The plant is still expensive to construct, but it's a relatively low 250 grand, which ideally pays off in 7 months. Still not exactly a dream come true if you're looking for a good industry to build and turn a profit, but it's certainly closer to that than the coal plant is. Even in purely practical terms, as we found out last time, the logistics of importing and transporting oil are fairly simple, if not particularly cheap. An oil power plant can also be easily supplied by a couple of moderately crappy pump jacks at home that take very little to keep running, boosting the plant's profitability to 95%. So if you decide to make your own electricity, this is definitely the best overall choice, especially early on. Coal power does have its place, but only once you have your own coal mines. In my experience, once those mines are in place and working, you can very easily end up with way too much coal on your hands, and burning it for electricity is a brilliant way to rid yourself of the surplus. The next category takes us to the exact opposite of burning stuff, with the solar and wind power plants. Sadly, the game doesn't have any storage solutions to give power back whenever there's no sun or wind, so I can only recommend building renewables as an addition to conventional sources of electricity. Assuming a production efficiency of 50%, the solar plant is seemingly profitable at 88%. However, this number stands for only 246 rubles a day, and since the plant itself costs over 400 grand, it pays off in 4.5 years. And we thought pump jacks were slow to pay off. The big wind turbine is a lot more sensible price-wise, but at 50% efficiency, it earns you a very hefty 22 rubles a day. But we're down to 3.5 years for our investment to return. The small turbine is cheaper, pays off in under 3 years, and makes a whopping 9 rubles daily. Paint me decadent, but having to put together vast fields of these with all the spaghetti wires, roads, and bulky switches only to generate a fraction of the money a single food factory makes is not that exciting. Although there is a marginal use for them that you can try. Turbines supply electricity at medium voltage, which means that you can connect them directly to substations. And you can do this to mitigate brownouts in places where the transformer feeding the substation is at maximum capacity, but it's tough to build more transformers to remediate this in other ways. Last and somehow least is the nuclear power plant, which we talked about at the Ministry of Atomic Energy conference last year. Long story short, a reactor generates over 6 grand worth of power and eats up almost 18 grand in fuel every day. Now, there are plenty of role-playing reasons to build these, and maybe also a desire to cover the electric needs of 220,000 people in one neat facility, but from a profitability perspective, nuclear is simply a non-starter. So there, the best electricity tip you can get is buy the damn thing and forget that power plants exist. But if you absolutely have to build those, make sure they eat a hearty, energy-rich breakfast of oil and gas and have a giant filthy smokestack. Which goes well with all of your other filthy smokestacks, so it's a style choice too. That reminds me, by the way, how about we finally build the filthy stacky master?